Good evening, I'm Jim Lara. On the NewsHour tonight, the many aftermaths of yesterday's assaults on the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon in Washington. We have a summary of the latest developments and looks at the recovery efforts, the investigation into who was responsible, and the state of airport security, plus a how to respond discussion among former officials Warren Christopher, Samuel Berger, and Warren Rudman.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
Imagine a world where no child begs for food. While some will look on that as a dream, others will look long and hard and get to work. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
There were a variety of developments this day after the terrorist attacks in New York and Washington. Attorney General Ashcroft said there was credible information Air Force One and the White House had been intended targets. And he said a number of the men who hijacked 4 airliners Tuesday had been trained in the United States as pilots. They crashed 2 of the planes into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York and a 3rd into the Pentagon. A 4th went down in western Pennsylvania. The investigation appeared to focus on Osama bin Laden's terror organization. There were no arrests, but FBI agents conducted searches and questioned people in Boston and in various Florida cities. At the World Trade Center today, rescue workers found several people alive in the rubble. Mayor Giuliani offered a preliminary toll of 45 dead, 1,500 injured, but he said the final death toll will probably be in the thousands. Late today, the last few stories of one of the towers collapsed, sending hundreds of people running. In Washington, special teams searched the collapsed section of the Pentagon where dozens were still missing, but several thousand people returned to work there today. And at the White House, President Bush met with his national security team and said the hijack assaults were acts of war. Later, Congress strongly condemned the attacks. Elsewhere, most domestic air traffic remained grounded nationwide indefinitely, but some flights were allowed to let stranded travelers reach their destinations. Financial markets remain closed, but could reopen Friday. Now to the details, beginning with 2 reports from New York City. The first, narrated by Spencer Michaels.
Massive rescue and recovery efforts continued through the night and this morning in Lower Manhattan, the area that had been home to the World Trade Center only yesterday. More than 1,000 relief crews tried to clear away tons of debris and rubble from the site of the attack, often by hand. New Yorkers awakened to a changed and eerie skyline, one still clouded with dust and smoke from the smoldering ruins. Just offshore, the aircraft carrier USS George Washington was in place to provide air defenses in the skies over New York City should they be needed. Satellite photos revealed the big picture of damage and smoke at Ground Zero. On the ground, the scene included broken girders of buildings, once among the tallest in the world. Buses and rescue vehicles destroyed. A girl's doll lying on the street. Clothing racks covered with dust. Throughout the night, crews worked to pull out victims trapped underneath. Thousands remain missing, including at least 202 firefighters and 259 police and other city workers. New York Governor George Pataki expressed thanks to the rescuers.
Mayor, your police and fire not only were heroes at the beginning, but they're still heroes. They're down there under enormous personal strain and risk. I saw them at the Ground Zero while a high-rise was on fire right across the street that could have collapsed, and they are risking their lives to try to save their friends and their colleagues and the New Yorkers who are still trapped.
Meanwhile, city officials still did not have an estimate of the number of people killed, but Mayor Rudolph Giuliani said the numbers would be staggering.
Building number 2 had a chance to clear out. A lot of people probably cleared out of building number 2. Building number 1 had some time to clear out, but there were areas of it that were affected. The best estimate that we can make, relying on the Port Authority and just everyone else that has experience with this, is that there'll be a few thousand people left in each building.
Officials with the Federal Emergency Management Agency explained today why it was taking so long to recover the bodies and how that compared with the bombing in Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City, for that small structure, went 15 days. So you can imagine that we're going to be in a long, sustained operation. Now, the difference is New York City has a tremendous capability, 14,000 firefighters and paramedics. So that's also in the equation, but I think that we're looking at least a 30 to 60-day operation.
With the exception of relief workers, Manhattan's Lower West Side was shut down today. All of the financial markets were closed for a second straight day as well. The mayor encouraged the rest of the city to try to return to some semblance of a normal day. The task of rebuilding New York's savage skyline and its crippled financial district, the world's economic nerve center, was a major concern to the mayor.
There's no question we're going to rebuild. I can't say that we know the exact nature yet of how we're going to do that. The skyline will be whole again. Exactly, what will be there, I think we have to leave to giving some people some time to consider it and to think about it. And also, the reality is that the people in New York City are going to be whole again. We're going to rebuild. We're not only going to rebuild, we're going to come out of this stronger than we were before. And in addition to having wonderful people in New York, as the governor indicated, we also have the strongest business community of any place in the world. And then we're going to call upon them, and we're going to need their help. But we're going to come out of this emotionally stronger, politically stronger, much closer together as a city, and we're going to come out of this economically stronger, too.
Late today, the few stories of the South Tower of the World Trade Center that remained began to collapse. Rescue workers were told to leave quickly, and another nearby building, One Liberty Plaza, was also threatening to come down.
Now, a report from Ray Suarez on the ground in New York City.
While crews struggled to bring order out of the chaos at the scene of the attack, in other parts of New York, the attention turned to treating the hurt, searching for the missing, and processing the dead. A day and a half after the terrorists struck, there was still relatively little known about the human cost of the crime.
You want to come and speak to somebody? I did already. Okay.
Outside the New School University in New York's Greenwich Village, a line stretched for a block. St. Vincent's Hospital, one of the main trauma centers in Lower Manhattan, set up an information clearinghouse, a unified database with all the news of the wounded admitted to area hospitals. John Castro's helping his son look for his fiancée.
Her parents had contact with her right after the plane hit the first tower, but we haven't heard anything since the second, when the plane went through the middle of the second tower there. That was the last contact anybody's had with them, so we're out here looking. We don't know what to do, what else to do.
Well, it must get harder with every hour that passes.
Well, it is. It's quite hard. I mean, as time goes by, things are more bleak. But he doesn't want to give up hope, and neither do I.
The family of Moises Rivas, a chef at Windows on the World, the famed restaurant at the top of the World Trade Towers, also waited for word and worked the phones.
We don't find him in the list at all. And I'm just waiting to see if he up here, that's it. And
do you know that he went to work yesterday morning?
Yes, he did. He called me from there, 9 o'clock exactly, and he told me that he left me and that was it. And he hung up the phone on me because it was the explosion right there, the first explosion.
So he already knew something was up.
Yeah. Yeah. He just said, I'm okay, don't worry, I love you. No matter what, I love you, and he just hung up.
Yeah.
And I wish he appeared because we got 2 little kids.
My son was Mark Zeppelin. He worked on the 104th floor.
Desperately holding on to scraps of hope and fighting to maintain composure, brothers and sisters, husbands and wives tell anyone who listen about who they're looking for.
If anybody sees him or knows anything, his name is Andrew Stern. And
Do you know that he even made it to work yesterday?
Yes.
You do know that?
He did go to work yesterday. He was in very early, about 7:30. So he was definitely there. So if anybody knows anything, please, his wife and his mother and the rest of us are all waiting to hear. Andrew Stern from Cantor Fitzgerald.
My brother was on that floor. I have a brother also that's missing.
Okay.
He's Robert Slewack's wife, Susan. They're from Long Island. Their number there is 516-783-8244. We were here yesterday and we thought that they were setting up a facility or a service for people from Cantor, and as I understand it now, I don't know if they're there or not, and we'd like the Cantor people to please come and give us some information. This is my brother, he's 42. He was on the 103rd or 4th floor. His wife, he called his wife when he heard a bang, and told her there was smoke all over and the phone went dead, and that's the last we heard, and that was yesterday.
This is my brother, Tom Knox. He was in Tower 1 on the 105th floor. If anybody knows anything about him, please contact us.
The flow of the wounded into trauma centers, a torrent yesterday, slowed to a trickle today. This was a chance for the emergency workers at St. Vincent's to catch their breaths, grab a bottle of water or a piece of pizza, take blood donations and process volunteers. A dozen refrigerator trucks rolled in a convoy to the New York City Medical Examiner's office this afternoon. As one processing center for the dead reaches capacity, the work spreads to centers throughout the metropolitan area. What you see behind me is just the front edge of a line that stretches more than 2.5 blocks to the FDR Drive on the east side of Manhattan. These people are waiting to submit personal information questionnaires. These are 6-7-page dossiers that contain information about blood type, identifying scars, dental work, and if you remember, the last outfit of clothes a missing person might have been wearing when they headed for work yesterday morning. One of the most interesting parts of this shared experience for these New Yorkers is how, even though on the front of the line they've been waiting for more than 3 hours to submit this work and give a personal interview, there is no panic. There's very little in the way of acting out or the tears. It's deadly calm back on that street. People have very serious work to do. All day you knew something was wrong in New York, not by what was there, but by what was missing. Wednesday, midday, no traffic on 6th Avenue, and above 6th Avenue, no shadow from the World Trade Towers.
In Washington, government officials stepped up the rhetoric as the Pentagon recovery efforts continued. Kwame Holman reports.
The day after dawned in Washington with smoke still rising from the Pentagon. Small fires in roof sections continued to burn. Defense Department employees had been told to return to work, but officials briefly reconsidered that and ordered the massive building cleared.
We have had the fuel from the jet catch fire again, and we're now in there with some additional hand lines and some phone lines with aircraft firefighters inside of the insides of the Pentagon, trying to suppress it, this time with firefighting foam.
Just after noon, officials rescinded the evacuation order despite the stubborn flames. Pentagon officials said no one could have survived the catastrophic impact of the jetliner and the fire that followed. FBI agents combed the grounds for evidence. Today's return to work for official Washington included President Bush, who received his daily national security briefing, then met with the cabinet.
The deliberate and deadly attacks which were carried out yesterday against our country were more than acts of terror. They were acts of war. This will require our country to unite in steadfast determination and resolve. Freedom and democracy are under attack. The American people need to know we're facing a different enemy than we have ever faced. This enemy hides in shadows and has no regard for human life. This is an enemy who preys on innocent and unsuspecting people, then runs for cover. But it won't be able to run for cover forever. This is an enemy that tries to hide, but it won't be able to hide forever.
This is an enemy that thinks its harbors are safe, but they won't be safe forever.